topic for the classic school. Of course, last week we classic school on Adams Field. Now classic school will be on Malthus and Ricardo. Thomas Malthus. These are the background of Thomas Malthus, who are more popular to address topic on population growth. Of course, also others things like the value theory, diminishing return, right? And on the market glut. Right? Cool. Thomas Malthus have two important publications. The first one, an essay on the principle of population. This one until now also very popular, and principle of political economy. Right? Two major during the Thomas Malthus time, right? Two major controversies in England, as mentioned before. The background of the economic background, the history, social, political background actually will have an influence of what are the economic thought it developed at that time. And later on, if this economic thought is acceptable and influential, you will again reshape the background. So during that time, you have an increase in poverty, right? A lot of controversy on how to solve this poverty problem. Of course, in that time also you have poor law and then con law that restrict international trade. You have growing urbanization until you have a lot of unemployment and poverty increasing very, very clearly. Right? So that time Malthus developed his theory, the class conflict of Malthus time. Right? Through the period of Industrial Revolution, the standard living of the poor fell a lot in relationship to the standard of the middle and upper class. So here you notice that the gap, right, is being wider. New factory system destroy the labor traditional way of life. Previously, the labor, let's say, example, they make pottery, they make craft, they are the owner, they themselves have some ownership or have some power over what they should produce, how much they produce, and how they produce. But after Industrial Revolution, under the new system, the labor relationship with the employer were through impersonal market or cash natures. In other words, mean they lost direct means of production. They were just merely a worker, right, or a seller of labor power, totally dependent on the market condition. What does this mean? They no more be able. They don't have the power to control what they want to produce, the quality or how much they produce. They just offer themselves as a worker, getting paid a salary, and the salary and the demand for the labor is completely depend on the market condition. In this case, mean if let's say they are producing this product A has no demand, so reduce supply, so reduce labor. That's why in micro, sometimes you notice that demand for labor is not a direct demand for the labor, it's actually a indirect demand. Depends on the demand for the product this labor will produce. So the relationship become impersonal. Another important consideration in assessing the living standard of the working class during the period of capitalist industrialization was a rapid urbanization that took place at the time. Right? So fast, of course, until now, also you notice urbanization also got problem. If you study a United Nations Sustainable Development Goal, there's a specific goal on sustainable city as well. So in Malthus population theory, population when unchecked increases geometrically, subsistence increase at best only arithmetically. In other words, mean population will grow much faster than food. Right? So one day there will not be enough food. Right? So how Malthus theory will be to limit the population, right? Because the food did not grow fast enough. How to limit the population? Malthus identified two types of check to the population growth. I mean, limit to the population growth. Preventive check and positive check. Preventive check, in this case, is more like prevent lah. Just like before you get population out of control, then you try to prevent. So you will term at moral restraint, right? Referring to the effort to reduce the birth rate. So how, for Malthus, people who could not afford children should either postpone marriage or never marriage And conduct before marriage should be strictly moral. I mean, they try to, if they postpone marriage, no marriage, then they will reduce the birth rate. But for other preventive check, Malthus actually disagree on what he called as wise, including prostitution. That means you do not marry, you postpone marriage to reduce birth rate, right? But you go to prostitute or birth control. Birth control, of course, it may be a bit controversial why it called wise, but if you really study some theory on some religions, they are also got mentioned about the approval or not approval on the birth control. Right? But anyway, preventive check is to restrain the birth rate or to reduce the birth rate. Another one, positive check, is to increase the death rate. I mean, you reduce the birth or increase the death rate. Here, you refer to increase the death rate. Example are famine, misery, plague, and war. Malthus does not like advocate that you must have war and you must kill other people so that to reduce the death rate. But according to his population theory, when you have overpopulation, this kind of thing, this kind of unfortunate event like famine, like war, they will come, right, to and cause a lot of death. I mean, as a positive check. Right? Malthus elevate this to the position of natural phenomena of the law, right? They say the is natural. For example, if you have so many people like now, so many people crammed in a apartment, right? Then when you have infection, COVID, it's easily everyone get it, right? Compared to if your population is so low, it's only 1/10, then it's different. The unfortunate evil required to limit population as punishment for people who had not practiced moral restraint. Right? If the positive check could somehow be overcome, people would face starvation because of rapid growing of population would press upon a food supply and at best would grow slowly. So mean that if let's say got famine, got plague, let's say got COVID, got war, they cannot reduce the death rate or the death rate reduced very, very slightly, not enough. That means the people survive. Even though for this, then their growth rate overgrow the subsistence means food. So one day they also don't have enough food. But of course, this idea of Malthus population theory is being criticized. There are no right and there are no wrong. In claim that food subsistence or the food actually can increase fast due to technology, biotechnology, right? So they can increase fast and due to, therefore actually can supply food for the increasing population, right? So some of the contemporary thought is having big population policy has been praised and criticized. So, compare opinion of this policy from mercantilist, Malthus, and sustainable development perspective. What is the policy implication? Right? You must understand that the main idea of this Malthus population theory is population cannot grow over the growth of food. That means population cannot grow so fast until food is not enough, right? Therefore, what's the implication? According to Malthus, poverty and miserable are the natural punishment for the failure of the lower class to restrain their reproduction. Here, of course, some people will criticize that Malthus is biased, their target on the lower class. Why not? There's a failure of the upper class to restrain their reproduction, because upper class has money, has resources. Then, if you have overpopulation, food is not enough, the poverty or the suffer will most likely be the lower class, right? So, of course, there are some bias or unequal blame on the lower class. To give them aid would cause more children to survive, thereby ultimately worsening the problem of hunger. So, Malthus do not agree to give aid to this poverty. In other words, mean will be a bit cruel that if they have no money, they are poor, they don't have nothing to eat, you just let them be. Natural phenomena will take care of itself, right? So some of the Malthus ideas were adopted by the harsh poor law aimed at making the public assistance to so unbearable that most people would rather starve quietly than submit to its indigeneity. Right? During that time, the poor law, if you are poor, you need subsistence or help from the government. When you apply, they make it so complicated and like so degrading, right? Just like when you are begging something, so most people will rather don't want to apply. Why? Because based on this Malthus population concept, we should not help those poor lower class because they overproduce, they have too much children, right? And then too much children than the food they can supply. Okay? So if you come back to contemporary policy, do you think Malthus will agree on those like bantuan prihatin rakyat, withdrawal of pension money, or any other thing like let's say in England also you notice that they give food to these poor children because of lockdown, they don't have school, so right. So do you think Malthus will approve all this help or bantuan to the poor? So from this perspective, I don't think Malthus will disagree lah. Okay, next. This is not related to the population growth theory. It's another theory is called market glut, or in other words, mean oversupply in the market. Right? This one actually is from his another book, Principle of Political Economy. Right? To make it simple, the market forces of supply and demand do not automatically push the market price. Right? Then, because why he see the worth of commodity in place is estimate is not the natural price. Right? Okay. And I mean, when the market price differ from the natural price, then the natural price will be determined by extraordinary or accidental relationship of supply and demand. It's the theory of glut or depletion. Glut means oversupply or depletion. The component cost of the natural value of all commodity represent the income to the three classes in society: right? Labor, capitalist, and landlord. It followed that in any given period, the total cost made up of the aggregate natural value of all commodity produced had equal to the aggregate income. Okay, mean what? For example, you produce a car, right? The natural value or the cost to produce the car is the labor. Then the capitalist also provide capital, entrepreneurship, and the landlord provide the land for the factory to be built on, right? So the labor earn wages, the capitalist earn profit, the landlord earn rental on their land or provided. So they all total together is the component cost that we call natural cost, right? Therefore, the necessary condition for effectual demand to equal the value of commodity was that all these classes taken together to be willingly and able to spend all their collective income, all they on the commodity produced. Mean that these three classes, labor, capitalist, and landlord, right? They earn the income. If one of them do not spend, they just keep the money as the money itself only, then there will be some demand not fulfilled, right? I mean, let's say the cost is 1,000, the earning for these three classes will see 1,000. If one of the classes spend less 100, I mean spend only total spend 900, there are 100 extra excess or surplus of demand, right? They are supply. Yeah, 100. So the demand need to increase to 100. Otherwise, we'll have this called market glut, right? So there are two ways in which income could be spent. All of the income to be spent. The acquisition of commodity for consumption, right? How the income spent? You spend your income for consumption. The acquisition of commodity that will accumulate as capital, right? Therefore, if your income, you spend it on consumption, or you invest you invest in capital accumulation, or we call investment, right? If you don't invest your extra income, okay, after minus consumption, if you don't invest, you save it at money, so it's like saving. So in this case, saving is equal to income minus consumption. Income minus consumption is also equal to your investment. You see, two ways in which income could be spent. Income spent on consumption. After the balance of you spent on consumption, the income should be spent on accumulate as capital. I mean, should be spent as investment. if the number 2, acquisition of commodity that will accumulate as capital, is 0 or saved as cash, then it becomes saving. Therefore, this concept actually to come back to some term that you are familiar, that is S equals to I, right? Your macroeconomy, you always have this one, S equals to I. Right? The theory of market that continue. The cause of a general glut of commodities was the periodic insufficiency of effectual demand. He analyzed the pattern of expenditure of each of the 3 classes. Okay. Refresh back. According to this theory of market glut, the cost or the natural cost is from the income from the 3 groups: capitalist, labor, and landlord. All of them must spend all of their income to avoid market glut. Now, for the laborer group, they always spend all their income because their income is too low. So labor of necessity spend all the income on the subsistence. For example, the labor only earn 200 per month, right? They are even not enough, so they should spend everything. Like they had not much extra left. Capitalists, of course, they have profit more than enough for their daily consumption, right? So, but how do they spend their income? When they have a lot of income, they spend some on consumption, and they try to accumulate capital. So capitalists were driven by a passion to accumulate capital and had neither the inclination nor time to spend much on profit on the consumption of personal service. I mean, the capitalists only spend a few on consumption or personal service. They try to maximize investment. Landlord, however, are gentlemen of leisure. They don't do anything, right? Being assured of continual income for rent, they just have a rent. There's a lot of, let's say, land or shop lot. They just rent, and they spend all their income on comfortable surrounding. Right? Of course, they themselves cannot eat everything. They take the income to buy a lot, too many food. So, but they hire services of the servant. They go to buy classic art. They go to have education, university. Then they buy music, right? They go to concert. They just spend a lot of things on the luxury thing, right? They always spend. We assume that they always spend all the income on consumer good or personal services, right? Here also we assume that if landlord actually hire servant, right, or hire singer to sing for them, right? So this servant and singer will have income, and then they will be just like laborer. They will also spend all the income, right? So if this is the case, then no problem. There's no market glut. So supply will equal to demand. But the problem is, as capitalism progressed, there was a tendency for capitalists to receive too much income. Of course, if they receive too much income, they can invest even more and more and more and more income as investment. Then the problem is they could not find possibility investment in capital for all their money they save. They can invest, but not all the investment are profitable. Why? Why capitalists could not continue employ more workers and make more profit as they expand their capital? Right? Of course, here Malthus gives 2 answers. First, if we assume the new capital, they embody in the same technology as the old capital, that means technology, everything remain the same, right? So if capitalists earn more profit, they invest more, they accumulate more capital and go for investment, they require more workers, which cannot be increased as instantly as the increase in capital. Right? You can earn profit every month or every day, right, or every year. But every year the labor cannot be increased that fast, right? Every month you may increase your profit 20%, but every month labor may increase only 1%, so may not be as fast. As capital continue to increase, some capital find no labor, right? Labor shortage. So if there's no labor or labor shortage, the wage will increase, causing the reduce in profit. As supply and demand theory tell you, you want to hire more and more and more and more labor, but there are limited labor in the market, so you have to pay more wages to get labor, right? Capitalists will prefer to hold their income in barren cash, I mean in cash form, rather than continuing to reduce profit on existing capital by accumulating more capital. In this case, they will prefer to just hold the cash as the cash, right? They prefer like that rather than invest and then hire more labor, operate another new factory, and then notice that their profit margin or the profit they earn is getting less and less and less, right? Capitalists would cease spending all the income. There would be insufficient or effectual demand, causes the market glut. So when the capitalists stop to invest, just now like income minus consumption equal to investment, but if investment is less and less and less, then your demand will be less and less and less. So you have oversupply, or we call market glut. Of course, in later topic in this subject, you'll study imperialism. So what happened is the country as a whole will organize exploration and colonization of other countries so that this capitalist group can invest their capital in a colony country at a higher profit rate. If they invest domestically, you see their profit rate will reduce because of this reason, no labor, they had to pay higher wages. So there's one of the interlink between the chapters in this subject. Okay. Second, just now we assume that if the new capital embody or use the same technology, nothing changed. Now, if the new capital is a new labor saving technology or better technology, or labor saving technology, technology. So the more the capitalists invest, it will actually act as a substitute for labor. United Nations Development Program actually has listed some form of undesirable growth. One of them is the jobless growth. The economy is growing. Let's say the economy is growing 7%, but the job market may increase 1%. Right? Why? Because all this new growth is using better technology that require less labor or labor saving. So jobless growth. So if we assume that new capital is a new labor saving capital, better technology that use less labor, then the capitalists invest in new capital will actually act as a substitute for labor. They require less labor. Then the displacement of worker would reduce the demand, causes the market glut. Right? Therefore, how to solve this oversupply? When you have oversupply of the market, right? Then of course you have depression, you have economic recession. Right? So in either case, ultimate cause of the glut was the excessive profit leading to the unsustainable rate of capital accumulation. So if the profit is too much, the capitalists earn more and more, very, very, very large profit that they cannot consume everything, and also cannot invest or find profitable investment for the remaining of the income that they cannot consume, consume. So they prefer not to invest, not to consume, just keep it as cash. So if this is the case, you reduce the demand. Right? So the only answer to the problem, in Malthus' opinion, was to pursue the policy that would alter the distribution of income, leaving the capitalists with lower profit and some other class with more income to spend in consumption. Right? There must therefore be a considerable class of persons who have both the will and the power to consume more material waste than they produce, or the materialist class would continue to profitably produce more than they consume. Or another word mean, if there are excessive profit, right, the capitalist class cannot consume, the government should take away and redistribute this profit to the other two classes, the laborer or the landlord, right? So that if you are to avoid the market glut, or otherwise you tend to have a oversupply, market glut, and then you have a recession. Okay, the landlord themselves would not consume all the excess material produced. They would hire a large number of servants, right, and other unproductive labor to provide personal service, who would spend their income on the material commodity produced. So again, right, the market glut may have been caused by the capitalists, but the landlord class also got a problem, right, because they hire all this excessive but unproductive labor. The Malthus solution entailed the creation of an army of unproductive workers who were the servant of the landlord. They would consume the material without producing it, and thereby eliminate the problem of inadequate aggregate demand. But Despite that the landlord actually are employing unproductive labor, this unproductive labor has one important function, is to consume, to demand, right? To demand for anything that is less, right? If, for example, you have 1,000 product produced, demand is only 900 because the capitalist has too much money, so you should redistribute this one maybe to a landlord, so they hire more singer, more servant, more worker, right? Unproductive labor. This unproductive labor will take up this 100. So at the end, you solve the market glut, right? But of course, again, unproductive labor may not be good for long term. Another so-called classic school of thought will be by David Ricardo. David Ricardo contribution actually in many aspects. Right? If you study international trade, you will sure come to this one who call comparative advantage and many other aspects. Right? Here only focus a few aspects. Ricardo lived about the same turbulent era as Malthus, right? Then of course they were influenced by revolution, then poverty and all these other things, right? David Ricardo is a politician. He's a member of the parliament, right? But Malthus, I don't think is so. Ricardo, the main writing of Ricardo is the principle of political economy and taxation, right? If you see here, from long time ago, economy, politics, and of course the social problem like poverty, unemployment, inequality, population, then famine, all these things, they are linked together. They are studied as a whole: political economy, social economy, right? But of course nowadays you notice that when you study economy, you just mainly focus on the economy, cost, price, all these things, which I don't agree, right? So for Ricardo here, principle of political economy, what is the written in his principle of economy, political economy and taxation? In his preface of his principle of political economy and taxation, Ricardo stated that what he saw as the central problem of political economy, this one, the produce of earth, all that is derived from its surface or by the united application of labor, machinery, and capital, divided among the three classes of community: proprietor of land, landlord also, the owner of the stock of capital, I mean capitalist necessary for its cultivation, and the laborer by whose industry is cultivated. Is about similar with the Malthus three class also: landlord, capitalist, and laborer or worker. To determine the law which regulate this distribution of is the principal problem of political economy. The political problem is how to distribute the income or other things, right, among these three groups. Among the principal political economy, they touch on exchange value, right? Where for a commodity to have exchange value, it must have use value. Utility is not enough to measure exchange value. For example, let's say a shirt signed by, let's say, Cristiano Ronaldo or Messi, signed or wear and signed by. So if you are the fan of these two footballers, you have utility value. So you are willing to exchange more money than, let's say, for example, I'm not fan of these two. I don't like football. Let's say I like basketball. I don't like sport. So for me, these two shirt is just a shirt, right? For me to wear only. But for you, no, this is Ronaldo and Messi, just someone they sign on it. So you have a utility value. But some other have the use value. Okay, so you have two value. So possessing utility or use value commodity derive the exchange value from the two sources: their scarcity and the quantity of labor required to obtain them. Right? If it's easily available, right? Let's say there are 100 million of these two shirts, right? So it won't be that costly, right? The price will be cheaper, right, to acquire them, to exchange for them. If they only have 3 such shirts, then it's a bit different, scarcity. And see how is the quantity of labor to obtain them. For example, if let's say to produce a car, you need a lot of labor to let's say you need 100,000 value of labor, right, to produce them, then easily the cost will be 100,000 value. Right? So there are two things: the scarcity and the cost of production. In other words, mean the value of non-reproducible commodities such as rare artwork, classic book, determined by the scarcity, right? Of course, nowadays you see some classic like won't be produced, like very old money, right? Old things that cannot be produced, or even diamond, rare diamond that you will not find it too often. Maybe in this world only got three, like this art piece, like what the Ronaldo da Vinci, this artwork. Then long time ago, 100 years ago, they draw. Now the people, the artists already passed away, no longer here, so you cannot find the second artwork. So scarcity will have already determined high value. Most commodities are reproducible, assumed to be without restraint. Then is apply the theory of value. Okay? Of course, here you see relative price. Although labor is the foundation of the value of commodities, right? The quantity of labor required to obtain them. Right? Market price deviate from the value of the natural price because of the accidental or temporary fluctuation of supply and demand. Even though you see the value is the quantity of labor required to obtain them, right? But in the short run, even though let's say a mineral water may cost only 1 ringgit, right? But due to suddenly over demand, let's say suddenly your area whole, let's say you stay in Selangor, the whole Selangor unexpected water cut for 1 week, then you go out and buy the mineral water out of stock. The remaining one will be double the price you also buy. Right? So you'll be accidental or temporary fluctuation. After the water come back, maybe 1 week or 1 month or 2 months later, then you will come back to the natural price. Okay. If the market price rise above the natural price, profit rise and more capital used to produce a commodity. The best example with the face mask. When you have COVID, firstly, you go out and buy face mask and hand sanitizer. It's all out of stock, and then it's very, very expensive. I got buy one box of face mask, I think 60 ringgit or 90 ringgit. But now they sell at 20 or 3. You go to Shopee, Lazada, sometimes they sell at 5 ringgit. Also has, right? Last time they sell at 30 ringgit, 60 ringgit. Right? So after some time, then you're back to the normal price, right? Ratio of individuals seeking maximum advantage tend to equalize. Why? Okay, this is if the market price rise above the natural price, profit rise and more capital used to produce it. So nowadays you see so many people produce face masks until the price drop back to not so expensive. Okay? Short run prices depend on supply and demand, but long run value depend on the real cost of production. Right? In this real cost of production, again go back to the labor required to obtain them. Okay? Yeah. Of course, this currency question is a bit different. In 1979, right, 2 decades of warfare between England and France, right, a panic and a gold run. Of course, when you have in war, especially 2 decades, war need a lot of expenditure. Right? So when the government suspend the cash payment, England found itself on a redeemable paper standard. So the government at that time suspend the cash payment. Then what happened in the war? When country need cash or need money, when money is tied to gold, and when you print money, you are supposed to have some backing of gold, some gold amount to back them. But because due to urgent need of money, so the bank are actually over issuing the paper currency, not checked by requirement to pay gold on demand. Right? So over printing were profitable operation, help to finance government spending during war especially, but will hardly conducive to stable price, meaning will cause the price to be fluctuate. Of course, in this case, we'll have high inflation, right? So therefore, Ricardo proposed a gold bullion standard, right? Okay. I mean, if you see here, the principle of political economic and taxation, he got some contribution will be on value and price, and then on currency, he will support the gold standard. Okay. Then another one we call the Ricardo equivalent theorem. This one will be very useful for any research or any project topic, right? Because this one help you to explain on fiscal policy. Right? Okay, see here first. SP is the private saving. I mean, P is supposed to be subscript, or I mean smaller on the top or smaller on the below. So saving, private saving. not government saving, private saving, is investment plus current account plus government expenditure minus tax. Okay. Government expenditure minus tax bracket here, the net of government expenditure minus tax represent fiscal policy. I mean, the government spend money, and then tax is the government income, expenditure is the government spend money. Okay? So you rearrange this one, you'll get current account equal to private saving minus investment minus the government net expenditure. Or in other words, mean government budget deficit. If you have G100, T70, so you have 30. 30 here in this case is deficit 30 because government spend 100, receive 70, so still negative. So it represent budget deficit. Mean increase in G minus T is positive. Okay. If this theorem holds, I mean, if this Ricardo equilibrium theorem is true, correct, this may lead to increase in private saving and thus decrease in consumer spending. Okay, you see here, if G minus T increase, mean budget deficit increase. Or in other words, mean you have a expansionary fiscal policy where government increase the government expenditure and decrease the tax. So this one will be increase. Okay? So what happened? If we assume the current account unchanged, if we also assume the investment unchanged, to make this equation balanced, you minus more of this one, right? So this one must be increased. For example, let's say this one is 10 minus 10 minus 0. 10 minus 10 minus 0. But now government budget is not 0. Government budget becomes plus 2. So you have, just now is 10 minus 10 minus 10 minus 10 minus 10 become 0. So CA 0. So you have 0 equals to 10 minus 10 minus 0. But now you have 0 equals to 10 minus 10 minus 2. So in this case, it's not balanced. It's not equal anymore. So to make it equal, the private saving must increase 2. So you have 0 equals to 12 minus 10 minus 2. Then only you get back 0. Therefore, you see, if the theorem holds, this may lead to an increase in private saving. I mean, G minus T increase, private saving increase. So if private saving increase, that means saving increase means spending decrease. So mean decrease in consumer spending. Right? The reason is anticipation of higher tax in the future, hence saving now for paying the future tax burden. What does it mean? If the current government increase the budget deficit, spend more than their tax, right? So the citizen will think that their budget deficit must be financed by two things, right? Government budget deficit must be financed by other two ways. Usually will be financed by debt. I mean, they borrow money to finance this budget deficit. Another way, which is last resort, will be to print money. Right? They spend more money, then they print money. Usually will not be the first choice, because it involves a big issue. Right? So usually they will borrow money. Right? So if government have budget deficit, they borrow money to finance this budget deficit. Borrow money must be repaid back in the future. So when the future comes, the government have to repay back the debt they borrow to finance the deficit plus the interest of the debt. Then how do the government get the money to repay back the debt plus the interest? Is they were going to tax more and spend less. So this budget deficit, people will the anticipated will be reversed, right? So he anticipated a higher tax in the future. So to overcome this higher tax in the future, they will save now for paying future tax burden. Just like the Malay proverb that you sediakan payung sebelum hujan. You see, there are big cloud here. The budget deficit is like a dark cloud, getting more and more dark and more dark. The cloud is getting thicker. So if you want to go out in the future or after 15 minutes, after 30 minutes, after 1 hour, you sure rain one. So you better prepare the umbrella first. So they will anticipate this thing in future. So they will increase the saving. Right? So what is the policy implication? This is known as the Ricardo effect. Right? So the policy implication is increase in the net government expenditure is offset by the decrease in consumer spending, thus making the budget deficit or expansion fiscal policy less effective. I mean, government fiscal policy expansionary, spend, tax less and expenditure more, but the citizen anticipated a higher tax, so they will save more and save more, right? Usually we expected that, or logically expected that the increase impact from this one, okay, in this case, this one increased, that means consumption decreased, government expenditure increased, consumer expenditure decreased, so actually it will offset the effectiveness of fiscal policy, and then fiscal policy become less effective to generate extra expenditure. Okay. Then some of the thinking question for you to think, right? If you understand this concept of Ricardo equivalent, government as budget deficit will lead to debt to finance the current budget deficit, and this debt need to be repaid. Therefore, anticipation of higher tax in future. Now, the private saving will increase. But will the length of government borrowing affect the validity of this theorem? If the government borrow a very short-term debt, 2 years or 1 year only to finance this budget deficit, will we make this theorem equilibrium valid? If the government borrow long-term debt, 50 years later only repay this budget deficit debt, will it affect the Ricardo equilibrium theorem? Will people still anticipated of the higher tax in future? The keyword is in future. This future is very, very, very long future, 50 years later. How can bequest intention of the citizen affect this theorem? Bequest intention means you want to save something for your next generation. For example, you want to save some house, some money for your children and grandchildren. Okay? How will it affect this theorem? Okay. Another one will be this policy implication on wage and profit and rent. Right? Wages should not be regulated, right? And left to the fair and free competition, right? For David Ricardo, right? Because if you restricted the wage, like you have a minimum wage policy, right? So instead of making the poor richer, they are calculated. I mean, those policies are calculated to make the rich poor, hence deteriorating the condition of the both poor and rich. For example, you tax the poor, right? You want to reduce this poverty gap. So by wages, so you try to compulsory the capitalists to pay very, very high wages, or you tax a lot of profit, you increase the profit tax a lot, right? So at the end, you are making the rich poorer, but at the same time, this policy usually will not enrich the poor. Of course, political economy, you may have a lot of leakage here and leakage there, right? Ricardo conclude that, same as the physiograph, that a tax on the rent would affect only rent. So such tax would fall wholly on the landlord and could not be shipped to anyone else. But of course, now it's different story. For Ricardo and the physiograph, they claim that if you tax on any renter, right, you cannot be transferable out. But now if you tax on any renter, the landlord or the shop owner will increase the shop rental, and then the businessman who open, let's say, a restaurant on the shop rental, will increase the price of their food. Then the consumer will have to pay higher price also, right? So of course this one is debatable, right? Disagreeing on the Malthus, Ricardo strongly opposed on the Corn Law. Corn Law is a law that has restricted international trade. As you know, Ricardo actually favor international trade, right? So if you have any law like Corn Law that restrict the international trade, then you reduce the gain from the international trade. So the third meaningful contribution of this David Ricardo will be the theory of comparative cost or comparative advantage. This one we will not touch further because you learn it in macro trade and international trade subject. Right? Law of comparative advantage. Adam Smith actually proposed this trade was based on difference in the absolute cost, they mean absolute advantage theory. But Ricardo claimed that trade can still be win-win situation based on difference of opportunity cost or the comparative advantage cost theory. But of course, there is a debate. All these two comparative advantage and absolute advantage theory, where they encourage international trade, there's a win-win situation that can be illustrated with a number or everything, can prove that it's a win-win situation. Yes, true, but term and condition apply. It must be fair trade. Okay? If the trade is not fair, that means it will not be a win-win situation, it will only be a win-lose situation. Therefore, come out with this one: is free trade equal to fair trade? Free trade equal to fair trade is one of the Mahathir famous for. During one of the free trade conference or workshop, he voiced out that free trade is not equal to fair trade. We can freely trade with each other. No one said you cannot trade with T, you cannot trade with B, but the trade may not be fair, right? For example, you trade with your friend, your one mineral bottle A, 1 ringgit, okay, exchange. Then they sell to you a handphone, a book. Let's say a book, 30 ringgit. You think your book is fair, but maybe I'll sell you a note, 3,000. You don't buy. I don't give you pass. Okay, have to buy, no choice. Then so in this case, you are free to trade, but it's not fair, right? So if this is the case, then there will be one person who win, another person who lose. So trade theory, including Ricardo, comparative advantage and absolute advantage, right, is still there. One small star usually a buy thing, say term and condition apply.